Good afternoon, everyone. It is a moment of strategic inflection in the Middle East and the larger region. There is a fragile ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas. Despite ongoing, and even today, some violence, the violence has come down dramatically since the end of the war. And many diplomats and military officials in the region are focused on what's known as Phase 2, moving the Israeli military out of Gaza and an international security force to come in. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, has just been welcomed at the White House, a royal welcome, walked away with 48 F-35s, the US's most advanced chips, and Saudi Arabia is now a non-NATO major US ally. Iran, despite 12 days of war, begins to reconstitute, or tries to reconstitute, its missile program and perhaps its nuclear program, but remains quite naked in terms of being able to defend itself against Israeli and US attack. Syria has a new leader that was also welcomed to the White House recently and has begun a course that it wants to see a version of normalization with Israel, but also a different future for the region in which Iran is not able to use Syrian territory to move weapons into Lebanon. And of course, Lebanon itself has made great strides, according to the people I talked to, trying to dismantle Hezbollah, but a weak Lebanese government and a weak Lebanese armed forces, the LAF, continue to struggle, and Hezbollah itself is trying to reconstitute as well. So, in that strategic environment, we're going to do something a little different than you're used to today. I'm going to introduce the man to my left, and he is going to take your questions. I'm going to sit off to the side, facilitate, try and keep things civil, but this is going to be your chance to ask questions about the region or, frankly, anything you want. So, he doesn't need much of an introduction, but Ehud Barak, of course, was the Prime Minister of Israel from 1999 to 2001, and a reminder, from 1991 to 1995, he was the Chief of the General Staff of Israel at the time of his retirement, the most decorated soldier in Israeli history. So get your questions ready, and Ehud Barak.
Give me back my pen.
Oh, I took your pen. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry.
You have to be careful with journalists.
All right. Yeah. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. All right, so again, I'm going to try and facilitate this, but this is your chance to ask the former Prime Minister of Israel questions, and we've got plenty of time, so we're going to go around the room. All right, first, sorry.
Please ask your question slightly slower than you usually speak in order to make sure I understand the questions. I have too many shootings near my ear, so I don't hear as I could hear a decade or 2 decades ago. So go ahead. I will collect several of them.
Well, let's start over here, and then we'll come across the room.
Thank you. My name is Justin Ling. I'm a columnist at the Toronto Star. As you may have seen, Benjamin Netanyahu just posted in the last couple of hours a piece by Jacobin magazine, what a world, entitled "Jeffrey Epstein Claims to Have Meddled in Israel's Elections," that features you quite prominently in the piece. I'm wondering if you'd like to respond and what you make of the Prime Minister sharing this type of content about you.
The publication was in a kind of publication named Jacobin or something like this, which is extremely anti-Semitist and extremely anti-Israeli publication. I wonder how it comes that the Prime Minister found the time to identify it. Probably it was held by his son, who spent his time now not in the front but in Miami. And the whole story is nonsense. You know, it's probably Epstein tried to aggrandize a little bit his role and his activities and so on. I regret of ever meeting him. I was introduced to him in 2003 in a public event by Shimon Peres, and the event with hundreds of Americans, including the Clintons and many others. And I was quite friendly with him for years, met many times on business issues and others. This story of intervening in Israeli election is total nonsense. Never happened.
Okay, I saw a hand in the middle before. Yeah, right here. So second row.
I just sent a photo that we made before to Salam Fayyad. He's sending his regards. And the question is connected.
Introduce yourself, sorry. First.
My name is Jakob Bizil, the founder of the World Forum and Cinema for Peace Foundation.
You want to stand up just so we can see you, sir?
Okay, I'm first time here, I don't know the rules. So in order to have a stable peace between Israel and Palestine, obviously it will need some Palestinian leadership, especially for the transition in Gaza. Who do you believe could take on that role? Or would you have any suggestions? Obviously, some things like this are dealt very confidentially, but maybe there's something you can also say publicly.
I think it's not our role to help the Palestinians to find their leaders. They should do it on their own. Salam Fayyad is a great person. I negotiated with him very intimately all along the time that he was prime minister. He was a real serious one, didn't touch internal Palestinian politics, but he was a respected economist working probably with the IMF or the World Bank. And he really dealt with social security, with transparency, with services to the Palestinian public. It was a very promising period. Unfortunately, he didn't want to go deep into politics, Palestinian politics, and some other politics in the Middle East are not the best place to enjoy your time. I'm hopeful that people like Salam Fayyad will enter once again the arena. And I think that he's a professor now in one of your universities in America. I hope we'll see people like him leading the Palestinian people.
I'll go to this side. I got a bunch of hands here, so let's start here, and then we'll move all the way around. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Ariel Moutazos. I'm Mexican-American, U.S. Bureau Chief of Televisa. Simple question. Do you see any Israeli government in the near future accepting the two-state solution and implementing it? Thank you.
Israel tried to go very far. And it started probably with Rabin and Peres. They are all not with, both of them are not with us anymore, but they started very courageously with a tailwind from the rest of the world as a result of the first Gulf War. In '91, there was the Bush Senior and Jim Baker created an atmosphere where the whole Middle East was ready to negotiate. It created a window of opportunity that continued over 18 years or 17 years up to 2017, where everyone tried to really make a breakthrough with Palestinians. It started with Rabin and Peres and Oslo. As a result of it, we get only kind of interim agreement with Palestinians about bringing back Arafat and his team from the Maghreb to Gaza. And as a result of it, we had the peace with Jordan. Peace with Jordan would not have happened without the precondition of agreement with Palestinian happening. And then Netanyahu replaced Rabin, or namely Peres at the end, after Rabin's assassination. And suddenly he found a friend. After the first half of the night that he spent with Arafat, he found a friend. Neither Rabin nor myself never fell in love with Arafat. We respected him as a leader of the other side, but no more than this. And Netanyahu gave him the second holiest place to the Jewish religion, namely Hebron, and promised them another 13% of the Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank. And I replaced Netanyahu. I tried to go to Camp David and make it clear whether we can reach a breakthrough with the Palestinians or not. And then I followed by Ehud Barak, who tried, by Sharon, who tried and decided. He was, to those of you old enough to remember, he was quite a right-winger hawk. He was one of the prophets of Jewish settlements in the Gaza Strip. And he decided that not as a favor to the Palestinians, because Israeli interest, because Israel's future identity, security, whatever, that we have to dismantle all the settlements in Gaza Strip, bring them back, not just the settlements, the synagogues, the cemeteries, everything. And in order that no one believed that that's the end of the story, he even dismantled 3 small settlements near Jenin, at the northern part of Judea and Samaria. So then followed by Olmert, who tried to bring about an agreement with Abu Mazen, and it stopped by the adventure in Lebanon in 2006, which led to his leaving power and some corruption court, a precedent for Netanyahu to come. And so basically the window of opportunity was closed. So both myself as a commander of the armed force and Rabin as a minister of defense and prime minister said in 92, immediately at the beginning of this window, we said we are now facing a window of opportunity and we have to do whatever could be done in order to reduce the tensions before a new wave of radical Muslim terror will overwhelm the whole region, and before Iran will turn nuclear. It was 92. And we tried. So Israel tried. We couldn't always find a partner on the other side. In fact, there is an urban legend that I said no partner, there is no partner, and by this act I closed the door on it. It's not true. I said something very technically. I said, we do not have a partner in Arafat at the present. That's all. It was just honest reporting. So now situation is very sensitive. The events of 7th of October, which was the worst in the history of Israel, even the Jewish people since World War II, created immediately a compelling imperative to Israel to make sure that Hamas will never reign over the Gaza Strip and can threaten Israel from there. And this caused this series of events that you have just described. As a result of it, we had a huge, impressive military achievement, intelligence achievements all over the Middle East, correcting in a way the shock that Israelis suffered in regard to trust in their armed forces and intelligence on 7th of October. So it seems to be an opportunity, but there are problems. It's even with the Israeli public, it's not easy to come. The trauma is still very fresh on the Israeli collective. In spite of all these achievements, there is very strong feeling of pain, a very strong kind of rage, deep frustration, feeling of humiliation, calls for revenge. When you talk to ordinary Israelis, labor voters, they tell you, you start to talk to them about the need, inevitable need to reach this engagement for Palestinian and two-state solution. You see their close, their attention. You lose their attention, you cannot talk. It will take time. But leaders should be sensitive to what the public feels. They cannot go too far ahead of the public, but they should never lose sight of the objective. An objective, the only sustainable way to solve the problem and not drift into eternal, infinite war, is to have a two-state solution. Because the whole thing is simple, but or painful, but simple. If there is only one political entity reigning over the whole area from the sea to the river, where some 15 million human beings are living, half of them Jews, half non-Jews. If only one political entity named Israel reign over this whole area, it will, if they cannot vote, it will become, no, if they can vote, it will become overnight a binational state, and within very short time, in historical terms, a binational state with Muslim majority. That's not the Zionist dream. And if they cannot vote permanently, they cannot vote in Judea and Samaria for only 58 years, but that's temporarily. If it becomes permanent, that's not democracy. And that's also contradict the very foundation of the Zionist dream. So the need to go to two-state solution, it is not a favor that we are generous enough to bestow upon the Palestinians. It's not because of the Palestinians, because our own history, future, security, destiny, identity. And leaders should follow it, because there is one old Roman saying that if you don't know which port you want to reach, no wind will take you there. And leaders, it's the role of leaders to see beyond what the public is ripe to see and navigate in a way that won't close any option. In this regard, we are now facing great opportunities. Certain dangers, but great opportunities as well.
All right, let's take a few questions, and then we'll collect them.
Oh, no, a lady, Jane.
Yeah, exactly. So, so why don't we do these two? So Evelyn and Jane, why don't you guys both ask your questions? And then we'll start with two, and then we'll expand to maybe three at a time.
I love her. That's why I intervened. Yeah.
You.
Yeah,
I still
you
have
gotta
to
stand up.
thank you for all your efforts for peace.
Jane, sorry, introduce yourself. Sorry.
I'm Jane Harmon. I'm a recovering politician and long time, and very long time, traveler to Israel and care enormously. But I wanted to say a few things. Thank you for your efforts for peace. But also, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Sharon did what he did and gave Gaza back. And I literally went there with the Clintons when he was president and Hillary was first lady. And we stayed at some fancy hotel on the Mediterranean. I think Trump might have liked it. And then we inaugurated an airport. And there was an AID facility. And it looked like we finally were going to get there. And the Arab National Congress changed its charter. Dennis Ross was crying to eliminate the section of calling for the annihilation of Israel. And the rest is the rest. But my question is this. Could Bibi form a different coalition at this point of the center? And he would stay as prime minister. I'm not sure this is at all doable, but it's a question. He would get a promise of total pardon, or would be given a total pardon from his corruption, the corruption claims against him. And with them, he would help to form this pathway to a Palestinian state. And then, if the election, I guess, is next year, he wouldn't run again, or can't imagine he would run again, but I don't know if that's even possible. But he would stay as prime minister until that election. He would step down, and then he and Donald Trump would get the Nobel Peace Prize.
All right, Evelyn, why don't you go, and then we'll. Hold on, Ms. Brenner.
Okay. Evelyn Farkas, I run the McCain Institute. Fantastic exposition, Mr. Prime Minister, of the two-state solution and why it's so important. Can you talk about the West Bank today, though, and the impact? How do you get from here, where we are today, and I know you said through leadership, but how do we get to a two-state solution given everything that's happening on the ground?
Yeah. Okay.
First thing in regard to Jane's question. Hypothetically, Bibi can change. He's very effective and impressive in the way that he can change positions as long as it strengthens or stretches his staying in power. But I'm not, it's for sure, it's not the worst or the optimal trajectory for Israel, and I hope it won't happen. Number one, there is an alternative. The alternative is just to replace Netanyahu with a government to which this trajectory is natural. It's not something that he has to impose upon himself in order to stay in power for whatever price. I think that the whole idea of giving a pardon to someone who with a trial that had not been ended, with a verdict or at the end, and who is not even ready to admit any responsibility to what happens. I think that it's a bad lesson for democracy to see this happens. And the reality is that no one in Israel really believes that even if he commits himself to leave politics once he is out of power, once he is pardoned, that he will go for it and execute it. No one expects the inner club of believers, of kind of admirers of him, do not believe it. So it could happen. It might happen. I hope it won't happen. And the better this government will be replaced is better. I want to quote Netanyahu himself. After this the war that I mentioned under Olmert in 2006 in Lebanon, Netanyahu was head of opposition. He said the following: the destiny of a nation cannot be the private march of a prime minister to save himself from accountability. And he even wants a metaphor that somehow related to Halifax. He said to tell us that the one who failed will be the one who will repair the whole thing is like saying that the Titanic captain, if he would have survived, should be given the command of the new ship of the company. And so I think that he set the norms by his own, but basically something that people do not understand in the world. It's my main message to foreign leaders and foreign publics, especially in the free world. Netanyahu and Israel are not the same. The interests of the security and national interests of Israel and the interests of Netanyahu are not the same. They are in many cases opposing. Netanyahu is focused now on personal survival. He understands that the day the war is over and the implementation of the rest of the 16 points from Trump plan start to be implemented, it's a day of reckoning for him, the acceleration of his the criminal court case for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. It's a time for national or state inquiry commission led by a Supreme Court judge, and something that people in the rest of the world do not know, that he came to power recently after almost being in power all the last 15 years. But he came recently to power 3 years ago, promising everything from destroying Hamas, we know how it ended, and to improve the cost of living in Israel. But he started immediately with judicial reform a day after election, which we call judicial coup d'etat, where basically he was very successful in castrating the legislative branch. No law could pass in the Knesset if it doesn't come from Netanyahu's desk. And already now there is any effective overseeing of government activities by the Knesset, nothing. And now he attacks under steroids the judicial system to make sure in Israel there is no constitution, no tradition of checks and balances, no filibuster, no presidential, there is nothing. Only the independence of the Supreme Court. So the government decided that they do not recognize the president of the Supreme Court. They do not recognize the general attorney. And they just put on the Knesset a few weeks ago a series of 9 laws, each 2 of them, and here and there only 1 of them will make Israel an autocracy, a de facto. Not Putin's version or Xi's version, but clearly at least like Orban in Hungary or Kaczynski when he was strong in Poland. So basically we are fighting against turning Israel from democracy into autocracy. even at the price of having someone else, not Netanyahu, to bring or seize the opportunities that are now opened.
Next question was West Bank. So we've seen public moves toward annexation in the West Bank. We've seen a lot more settler violence in the West Bank.
We have a lot of problems now in the West Bank. Some groups, groups of youngsters are living on the hills of Judea and Samaria. Some of them originally Israeli, some are immigrants from the United States and other advanced countries, but extreme Messianic guys. I compare them sometimes to the Proud Boys. What happened in the Netanyahu government, think of taking those leaders of the Proud Boys who are now in jail if they were not pardoned. I didn't follow it for 15 or 20 years, and nominate one of them to be Secretary of Treasury with certain well-defined role in the Pentagon, and the other one Secretary of Homeland Security. These guys were the guys under the investigation of our Secret Service for their terrorist-like operations in Judea, Samaria, and Israel proper. So we are in a very fine situation. These guys are not. The authority in the West Bank is of the army. Army watches it, but he doesn't have the authority to arrest people. That needs the police. The police is under this Messianic zealot minister. So they got an order, not an explicit order. They're reading the spirit of the minister, and they do not intervene. So Jewish youngsters are making pogroms in Arab villages or citizens of the region. It needs another government. This government cannot do anything. But if you ask me if it's possible, for sure it's possible. If a normal government stands and state its intentions clearly and demand the heads of the Secret Service, police, and the military to do what is needed. I was commander of this region, and I had the commander of the, later on as a chief staff, I had another guy, some of you know, Boogie Alon, as commander, and I remember my order to him. Not a single illegal new settlement should see daylight. And if it happens on Friday night, wait another 24 hours, not once the Shabbos is out, make sure that they don't see daylight. And it worked very well. And now the reason it's all about leadership and determination. People should read that you mean what you say and you really intend it to be executed, and they will do.
All right, let's try and take 3 questions because there's quite a few here. So we'll start with Paula and then the 3 hands that are up right now, and then we'll get through 3, and then Steve, and we'll keep going.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm Paula Dobriansky. I was a former Undersecretary of State, and I'm with Harvard University. I have a 2-part question. Would you mind commenting on how you see the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia going forward? MBS was just in Washington meeting President Trump and again reaffirmed that Saudi Arabia will not move forward unless there's an acceptance of the 2-party state, as you know. And then the second, what is your assessment or your view of Israel's relationship with Qatar? There has been a lot said about Qatar and what role it has played. I'd be curious as to your view.
All right, so behind you, Paul, is Roland. Oh, no, okay, right back there then. Okay.
This is Mauricio Mechulam from Mexico City. And my question, Mr. Barak, is regarding how Israel is being perceived. For one part, Israelis and a part of the Jewish community feel the victim. Most of the world perceive Israel as victimary. So the question here is, has Israel been incapable of communicating its stance in a better way, 1, and 2, what would you do, what would you say in order to reduce the gap that is being perceived between these 2 stances?
Okay, and then right at the end there. Yeah.
Thank you. Elliot Pence with Dominion. Canada and the U.S. are in the process of transforming their militaries to be more agile and innovative. Israel obviously has a history of having an agile and innovative military. I'm wondering if you could speak to, sorry.
Speak a little bit
okay,
slower to make sure that I understand.
I'm curious what lessons the U.S. and Canada can learn from Israel's military technologies and innovation ecosystem. Thank you.
Do you want to start with the last one? What can the U.S. and Canada learn from Israel's military industrial base, Israel's ecosystem?
About relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. You know, with some of the Gulf states, we had a very intimate relationship many years before it surfaced in the Abraham Accord. We had much more limited contact with Saudis. Maybe some of the princes from Bandar to Prince Turkey and others felt confident enough to have a dialogue with Israel, but mainly it was closed. When this crisis started 2 years ago, there was initiative that proposed to Biden and in a way adopted by him of Egypt, the UAE and the Saudis that basically argued the obvious, that even members of Netanyahu's war cabinet addressed within the cabinet but could not get an answer for. It is the observation that the only way to answer the compelling imperative that I described earlier, namely to make sure Hamas will never reign and threaten Israel from the Gaza Strip, is to replace it by another body. It's not to run after the last terrorist with RPG or Kalashnikov. That failed in Vietnam, it failed in Iraq, failed in Afghanistan, it will fail always. It's to replace the Hamas by another body. But this body or entity should be legitimized by the international law, by the international community, by members of the peace agreement, namely Egypt and Jordan, members of the Abraham Accord, the Emiratis and others, and by the Palestinians themselves. So it cannot be Israeli entity. It cannot be, it was always hallucination to think that there will be a transfer of the willing of some 2 million or probably 1.5 million Palestinians and a great Riviera. I always remembered our audiences that there is still the Riviera on the beautiful shores of North Korea waiting for implementation. So don't have too much hopes of this new Riviera. And there is a need to replace it by a body, cannot be even European, Scandinavian or something like this. It should be something with Palestinians inside. So the idea was clear, bring in an inter-Arab force backed by a majority resolution of the Arab League and if necessary, UN Security Council resolution, and bring them for, let's say, a year and a half or 2 years, during which the reconstruction of Gaza will start, financed by the Emiratis and the Saudis, and Egypt and Jordan will be part of this force together with the Qataris, and they will train a new security force made of Palestinians, probably certain influence of the Palestinian Authority, and all this could be done under a kind of experts government make of Palestinians and the Palestinian bureaucracy. You need some 50 or 60,000 people in order to run 2 million, and probably you can bring another 1,000 from Ramallah, but basically it's the Gazans. So this idea was backed by Saudi Arabia. And at the time, it was very easy to achieve it because it would have been perceived by the Arab world, by their own publics, the Arab publics in the streets, and the Gazans themselves as an effort to save Gazans from the suffering and Gaza from destruction. A year and a half later, in the recent months, it became much more sensitive because now it seems as an Arab effort to save Israel from sinking deeper into the mud in Gaza, especially when it's clear from the conversation that Netanyahu will reject it. So how can a Saudi crown prince find himself asking for something that seems to be helping Israel to go out and be rejected by the Israel. They cannot stand the predicted kind of response from their own streets. So it changed into a new idea to bring Indonesians and Qataris and Turkish, which is, I don't buy the idea that Turkey is a threat to Israel. It's a member of NATO. I happen to know very closely both the previous heads of state before Erdogan and Erdogan himself. It's not.
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm just going to, we only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to move you along, keep you going here.
Yeah, okay.
So bottom line, is normalization possible?
Bottom line, I don't believe that at the present MBS will change the formal position that he said. But it doesn't mean that if something develops and an opportunity, concrete opportunity to create beyond the F-35, beyond the civilian and nuclear power, beyond the new executive order to have some Qatar-like agreement, he might have a second thought if it becomes concrete.
What can Israel learn? I mean, what can the United States and Canada learn from Israel's military-industrial complex? Very quick answer.
Israel is a great place for high density of talent and a very entrepreneurial spirit and high level of experience in kind of modern warfare. We started with armed drones, weaponized drones, 15 years before McRaven started it in America. And we started with Iron Dome long before Gold Dome had been announced as a project for America. And we are very successful because unlike the Americans that reach the moon, because they go systematically all over the front and make sure no mistake is done, Israel has the technological chutzpah. They make heuristic guesses about what will work and what not, and because of having battlefield experience, the same guys who build the helmet for fighter pilots in the United States, they were fighter pilots themselves, not just electronic engineers. So it's very successful. We can join hands about it. I proposed to Netanyahu in 2015, where there was this debate whether he should go to the Congress and fight against Obama. I told him, instead of fighting, make sure we got a better terms to the next 10 years and start running a joint effort with Americans on what's called future combat system. It was 10 years ago. Now it's much riper with the new technologies. We can contribute a lot. It cannot be discussed in this facing a camera, but behind closed door, a lot could be done in order to improve for both sides, benefits of both sides.
And the fundamental other question, is Israel the victim or the aggressor?
You know, it's clearly on the chain, causal chain, at the top of the causal chain of all these tragedies stands the Hamas, the Hezbollah, Iran, and this ring of fire that they try to establish around Israel and now was totally destroyed. But having said that, you don't need to be with any kind of supernatural powers to observe that certain things that happened in Gaza needs accountability. That's why we demand that there will be an inquiry, state inquiry commission that will be nominated by the Supreme Court and had the Supreme Court justice at the head of it, that takes all the things, including what brought us to the 7th of October. How comes Netanyahu came to power on the promise that he is the only one who can destroy Hamas? He got paying them protection money through the Qataris and then got October 7th. So we should, in order to protect ourselves, I believe that we should run independent Israeli inquiries, not by the world, not wait for anyone from abroad. We should establish a group that will check case by case cases, and there are such cases in any war. You know it from your experience. I remember the British Special Forces admitted it. There are some places in a war where things go beyond what is legal or allowed, and it should be kind of interrogated or clarified, and anyone who is responsible should be accountable.
All right, we're going to do one more round here, okay? So, oh wow, there's 2 questions there. All right, but Steve first, because he's been raising his hand, so right in front of you, yeah? Yeah, oh, okay. We're going to go here, and then we'll go down here. So this is going to be a lightning round. Yeah, very quick questions, everyone, please.
Steve Sang from SOAS in London. If I might, 2 questions. One is that we are where we are with the situation. What will you see as the necessary conditions before Israel will look at a 2-state solution again? The second question is, what does Israel want in its relationship with China, and what price is Israel prepared to pay for that relationship with China?
Good, okay, right here, right in front of me, right here, great. And then we'll come around.
Hi, Julie Zarowitz, parliamentarian here in Canada, chair of our Canada-NATO parliamentary group. I have one question. Middle power democracies.
Cut it into 2 and propose
No,
it.
Middle power democracies like Canada, what additional steps, so what clear actions can we take at this moment to help ensure a lasting peace for both Israel and Palestine now?
Okay, all right, couple of questions down here. Yeah, oh, sorry, down here all the way in the front? Yeah, Vigo and then Randy.
Hi, Vago Radian from Defense and Aerospace Report. Great to see you again, sir. Nick, terrific job. Peter, spectacular.
Vago, we got no time, so go ahead.
Okay.
How many questions you have?
One question,
2 questions, very quickly.
No, one question.
Part 1 of the question is, Israeli leaders throughout history were always interested in maintaining global public opinion behind Israel. Every action was seen as a justified action. The response was seen as a measured action. The actions over the last couple of years have fractured support, as Mauricio was pointing out, to the point where it's even undermining U.S. support for Israel. So it's a 2-part question. What does Israel need to do to rebuild global public support for the state of Israel, which then has knock-on effects in anti-Semitism? And the second part of the question is, if the United States becomes an unreasonable or a difficult or a challenging ally, what recourse does Israel have strategically in that case?
I don't understand the second.
Yeah, well, okay.
What happens if the United States is no longer the guarantor of Israeli security, ultimately?
And Randy.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Prime Minister Randy Schuneman, Halifax International Security Forum. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee recently met with Jonathan Pollard, which brings up a difficult period in U.S.-Israeli relations.
Who meet with whom? I didn't get it.
Ambassador Mike Huckabee
Yeah.
met with Jonathan Pollard, which Jonathan Pollard,
Yeah.
famous spy, which led to a very difficult period in the 1990s. I wondered if you had any comment on that meeting.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep you moving, okay? Let's take China, because we haven't done that. How does Israel strategically see China? Very quickly.
I spent a lot of time in China, both privately and as a guest of the time of Jiang Zemin. And I knew very well the military leadership. Israel is part of the free world, and it doesn't have a full freedom of choice how to relate. Once America set its sights on China as a major arch rival, Israel has certain limits on how far it can go with any cooperation with China. We basically know where we live. But as an observer of geopolitics, I have my own view about China. I think it's a grave mistake of the United States of America to define China as arch enemy. China is a challenge. I think that historically speaking, the coming of China to become a major power along this coming century, a major power on land arena, on a global arena, is unstoppable. We should take it as a given. Now, the better way to define China is as an entity, big, important. We do not agree with their policies, with the system, with the non-democratic aspects of it. But there are a sizable power, effective both in soft power, not yet in hard power, and it deserves to be treated as at the same time being a rival, not arch enemy, but rival, competitor, and a partner. And there is a need to do it. It sounds unlogical. How comes it is emerging a huge, and there's a good friend of mine, Graham Allison from Harvard, already wrote a book, the Thucydides trap, to those who remember Thucydides, which gave some 19 examples. The new power race, it should end with a war. Not true. The only 3 cases that did not work this way were the cases post-World War II with nuclear powers. It changed.
I'm going to keep you moving. I'm going to keep moving. Canada. So what can Canada do to bring about, or what can Canada and other middle powers do to bring about Israeli-Palestinian peace?
I want just to add last remark, 20 seconds on China. China should be contained. China should be contained through a series of alliances, not necessarily militarily. It should be both cultural, economic, and militarily all around China. And there should be established, that's for the people in uniform, a working channel, hot lines with China to make sure that some accident, some misunderstanding will not deteriorate before anyone understands into full-scale clash. I believe that looking at Putin unable to cross on the land 150 kilometers from Belarus to Kiev, she has a lot of thoughts, second thoughts about whether he can cross the straits and take Taiwan. He might prefer, as an alternative, to do it by soft power, seducing the billionaires of Taiwan to have economic operation in China. It's a different story. It's not about the Chrome paper annual publication of some intelligent body in America that described the new catastrophe emerging from China that never fought outside of their immediate neighborhood.
What can Canada and other middle powers do to bring about Israel?
Canada, like many others, I never pretend to help the Palestinians with their politics, the Canadians or not, even the Americans. You should be only indirect, supporting democracy, calling for real democracy, not fake democracy where there is an event called election, but it doesn't represent what really happened in the public will, and supporting the protest movement in Israel, not in present. Don't send the Canadian citizens to fight for us. It's our role to correct Israel, and there is a lot of things to be done. We need tailwind from the world. The same kind of tailwind that I described earlier from 91 to 2008, it might occur right now because history has certain cunning. Sometimes after the big disaster on 7th of October, big victories all along the next year and a half, there come the second thought. Is Iran really delayed forever? No. Is the Hezbollah cannot come back? No. Do we know whether we have a new Julani in Damascus or Mr. Eshara, which is more benign? We will learn it along the way, but we should never close any opportunity, never lose eye contact with the opportunities. The dangers will play for themselves. You just have to be ready and to remain strong and self-confident. That's what Israel needs.
Quickly, Jonathan Pollard, famous Israeli spy, met with Mike Huckabee.
I didn't hear of it. I don't know what Huckabee has to talk with Pollard. It's probably, probably some of you were ambassadors, and there is certain freedom of action from the ambassador. This is a creative ambassador. And they probably decided to want to see these citizens. It's between him and the State Department. I don't think that we have anything to say about it.
And just for the record, the White House said that they were not aware, the president was not aware of that meeting, but the president supports Ambassador Huckabee.
We have to believe
that was the statement. And then finally, and this is a great way to end Vago's question, and let me just add something here. So 2 years ago, you and I stood on this stage, and I asked you a lot of challenging questions. And frankly, there was a lot of criticism of me in the audience afterward for challenging you 6 weeks after October the 7th.
Too much or
too much.
not too much?
Yeah.
I don't remember this experience in such
Whereas,
you never shoot, you just ask questions, so I just give
exactly.
answers.
You can handle him. You can handle him. Whereas in the last day, even Jean Shaheen, one of the most pro-Israeli members of the Democratic Caucus, was talking about her concerns about Israeli actions in the West Bank, and there was applause in this audience. So the question was, how can Israel gain back globally its reputation, and how does that interact with anti-Semitism? And that can be your final word.
Anti-Semitism is there and having been there all the time. I didn't find it in the Confucian world or the Hindu world, but in Western civilization, it's always there. I don't pretend that we will end it. But there is a certain relationship between, to think that that's the whole picture, that anti-Semitism, it's only part of the truth. There are certain things that people see on the screens, and especially in the young generation, including Jewish young generation. It comes underneath the skin. It's not easy to tell them, oh, it's no problem. It's remember what the Hamas have done on 7th of Hamas have done terrible things, and we have here a young Israeli woman who told you probably about it. Terrible things. But that Israel should not and pretend not to go that low and kind of copy the practice of Hamas, of course. We are a free world society, supposed to be a democratic, open society with accountability. You know, we have a rule within our armed forces. Every officer learn it. Even NCO, they learn it in the training that if you get a patently illegal order to do something that it's blatantly illegal, you don't have the permission not to follow it. You have the duty not to follow it, even if it came from your commander. If one of the recent chief of staff, now political leader, Gadi Eisenkot, was asked what it means. Give us an example. He said, when a 12-year girl comes with a pair of schizos to attack a fortified Israeli block on the road, and an order comes to shoot her, that's a patently illegal way. You committed not to follow it. And the same rule followed by our legal advisory to the attacks. And still, you cannot deny that some of the pictures, some of the kind of short videos that were taken by soldiers kind of testify that something wrong happened that should not have happened. And it's, once again, it's our responsibility. We should not wait for anyone from... That was our practice in any previous war, and it happens in other previous wars all around the world. When free world nation faces such cases, it interrogates them, and our own judicial system should sit down and decide what to do. That also will help us vis-a-vis the International Criminal Court and other agencies, because there is a kind of principle called a complementarity principle, namely, if the given country has a really independent judicial system, it is respected, no one intervenes. Now, that's part of the damage that Netanyahu caused it to the brand named Israel, to brand named Jewish people. By allowing this and not being the one who demands that this inquiry committee will sit immediately and try to find everything from his role in leading to the 7th of October, what happened during 7th of October, what happened in the next 2 years. All this had to be described, and the damage is really huge. I want to add one last point. There was one question about what Israel will do if it loses support and what Israel's attitude should be. So we had our founding father, Ben-Gurion, realized that there is a huge asymmetry in the Middle East. When you look at the geography, demography, and resources, we will never be able to compete small Israel with the rest of the hostile region. So there is a basic asymmetry. We have to win every single battle. For the other side, any round is just another round. If they do not succeed, they will try again. We never threatened the continuity of national existence of any neighbor. And the neighborhood threatens Israel once and again. So he set rules how to operate. He said the following: if you compel to have a war, do it aggressively on the enemy's territory, very short, in order that you reach the end of it when you still enjoy the legitimacy that was behind you when you started it, in order to be able to translate the achievement in the battlefield into sustainable diplomatic and political results. And always have a superpower on your side, and never, that's the most important, never lose firm grip on the moral high ground. We are not alone in the world. We cannot work without all this. Netanyahu behaved as if he either didn't know or suffered from self-imposed blindness about these maxims of war. Not to mention Clausewitz and Dr. Kissinger and others who basically repeated once and again, war is not an end on itself. It's just a means to an end. The end should be clear, otherwise you cannot know how to roll there. And he was rejecting this end because it would destroy his whole concept developed over a year that Hamas is an asset, Palestinian Authority is a liability, and rather than the other way around.
Ehud Barak, everyone. Thank you very much.